Hello, friends. Hello, family. How are we all doing today? I hope we're doing well. Welcome to the Divination Station. Today we are going to tune into a story. And this story is going to have characters with their own names, their own personalities, etc., etc. However, just like with the reading, I do believe that you are drawn to the energy of the story that's about to unfold for some kind of reason. Even if it's not exactly about you, or even a situation that is all that relatable to whatever you're going through right now. It's likely that it'll reveal a pearl of wisdom, or it might help you see your own visceral emotional reaction to something. You might find yourself arguing with it. You might find yourself nodding along, but either way, that'll let you know something about how you feel. And for whatever reason, Spirit has deemed those feelings important for you to pay attention to right now. So hopefully you'll stick around for the whole story and let me know after you've heard the whole thing how you relate to it or didn't, how you feel like it might have or didn't help you with your personal reflections, things like that. All right, so here we go. Who do we have coming out first on this board? Let's zoom in. We can both take a look at these cards together. Let's see. And we've got Vivian. She loves the open road. She is constantly in motion, learning, expanding, seeing every experience as a teacher. What she's not so aware of is that she avoids commitment. She's kind of rootless. But on the upside, she's adventurous. She's pretty wise. She's a savvy traveler. She's adaptable. She can improvise no matter what's happening. So she's a good person to have around when you are embarking on an adventure. And then we have on the other side, Russell, the fallout shelter optimist. He's prepared for the end of the world, yet remains cheerful. He represents profound compartmentalization that living under the shadow of annihilation can require in order to keep showing up to mow the lawn, paint the fence, and other mundane tasks. It reminds me of that show, Fallout. I love that show. If you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend it. The social commentary is chef's kiss. It's awesome. Another thing that's interesting to me is I was just thinking before I hit record that I wanted to start working on my Yuga's deck. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I might not be, but at any rate, I am familiar with the concept. So the Yugas in Hinduism are the 4 cycles of time. And in Hinduism, time is eternal. For now. And humanity, well, not necessarily humanity, it's time itself that goes through these 4 different cycles. And we are just subject to those forces, that energy, the energies of the time. Right now we are in, I believe it's called the Kali Yuga, and it probably goes without saying that is the time period where humanity finds itself motivated by ego, vanity, superficiality, materialism. There's a real blindness to the interconnectedness of all things. But fear not, because there's another cycle that comes right after it that's really quite nice. So, look forward to that. What else was I just going to say about that? I don't know. It's neither here nor there. If I can't remember it without having to really pull for it, then it's obviously not meant for this particular reading. So do we just have 2 people, though, Vivian and Russell, or do we want to include more people in this reading? I wish I had a pendulum. I do have a spinner. It's not up here, though. I thought it'd be fun to do something different and divinatory. I like to do a few different things, not just read cards. I also like you know, the thing that you spin around. What the heck is that called? It's escaping me at the moment. And I like throwing beads or corn or rice, whatever you happen to have. That's a fun one too. And also like reading wax melts, reading egg cleanses or limpias. I think that's probably about it. But I'd like to do some more of those, or just any of those on the channel. The only thing I've done on the channel so far is read cards. At any rate, I also want to pull some other traits. So this is kind of where they're coming from. One of them is quite concerned about the foreboding apocalypse, which is just a transition. That's all it is. It's not the end of anything. Well, it's the end of a cycle, I suppose, the closing, but it's not... It's not just an end. I don't know how to put that. Let's see. Let's find out something about Russell. He's quite detail conscious or focused. Well, that makes sense because he's given some very obsessive energy. Like, oh no, everything's gonna come to an end. Which is why he's so compartmentalized, because he has to like make a hard and fast boundary around certain thoughts to keep his mind from running away with those thoughts. And that can be a double-edged sword. A certain amount of compartmentalization is necessary to be a healthy person, but an excessive amount collapses your ability to hold complexity. And the ability to hold complexity is absolutely fundamental for mental health. Because nothing is, well, not nothing, but very little in the life is black or white. But to just be able to let go and accept that without struggling against it or resist it. Well, is an enlightened feeling, I suppose. Oh, and Vivian is a genuinely spiritual person. She's in love with spirit. Let's find out a couple more things about them too, because this is turning into a spiritual quandary. And I think that Vivian's showing up here not to talk about travel as much as she's here to talk about adaptability, but I could be wrong. We might get some travel tarot cards coming out that'll explain a little bit more about what we're looking at. That seems... Oh, I guess I should zoom out a little bit here. That's the only thing about showing the tabletop is I get carried away in reading the cards and I forget to zoom in or out so that you can see what's going on the table. But perhaps I'll improve that as we go forward. I don't know. Seems like an inconsequential detail at the same time. Speaking of detail conscious. Apocalypse is an interesting thing. You know, we can look at it as symbolic. You know, the end of an era in our own life. Personal tower moments and whatnot. We could also look at it as like a more literal. The ending of an era for the world, or for humanity, or for a specific society. I can tell you what, it might seem like the end of the world in the United States, but I think over in China they're doing pretty well. And over there in India, they're just like, we're still trying to recover from the last time it was the end of the world for us. The British really screwed their shit up, right? Oh, probably even worse than the Spanish in Mexico, but I don't know. That's debatable. I feel like I need one for both of them. This is an interesting one to come out, considering the general personalities of both of these and where they're coming from. We're going to look at how someone can use another person's commitment to growth and self-awareness against them, basically manipulating them to see themselves as somebody who's doing something wrong, so that basically to distract them from what how do I put this? Sometimes people do this, use somebody's interest in self-awareness and personal development against them to take the attention off of what they themselves are doing wrong. So, they'll point out something to the person interested in self-development that contributed to a misunderstanding or just a breakdown in the relationship between them, so that person will focus on fixing that so they will never contribute that to a situation or a relationship again. But meanwhile, they also contributed worse to that situation, contributed a lot more to the breakdown, but they're not going to deal with that. They're just going to keep you focusing on the little thing you contributed to it. So that is an aspect here, and I think it's probably coming from Russell, because he's got this really clamped down kind of energy. He's got, he needs to know what's black and what's white. He needs definitions. He needs, because you just can't make sense of what's going on unless everything's got a definition and a label and some way to organize it. Which, to be fair, that's how we run the world, right? If we notice breakdowns, we're going to figure out all the data and then use that data somehow. But data only gets you so far. Because what really motivates you, what motivates any person, any collective, from a family to a nation, to make the choice that they make is their underlying values, the underlying beliefs. I don't mean optional beliefs where you say oh, this is what I believe in and I don't believe in that. I mean the fundamental beliefs that are like a subconscious operating system that define values that are actually optional but are so ubiquitous amongst the people you live in, around the environment, your social environment, that you don't realize that they're optional, and neither does anybody else. I mean, that's what we're talking about when we talk about the Matrix, right? So environmental scientists can get all the data in the world and give it to the public about how human activity contributes to mass extinction and global warming. But people will not make use of that data if their underlying values that created that data in the first place, how did we end up behaving in ways that cause global warming and the extinction of a massive number of species? Because our underlying values prioritized material acquisition, superficial fears, issues around status, wealth, just things of that nature, superficial, you could say egoic things. And unless we change those underlying values where we prioritize ego over substance, we will continue to destroy the planet regardless of how much data we have that proves to us we're destroying the planet. We cannot behave in a different way, no matter how much sense behaving differently makes, if the values that dictate our behavior don't change. That is human nature. That's just how humans, both individually and collectively, function. And Russell here is a representative of that. He's representative of this idea that, if we can just get every duck in a line, line them up, get them in a row. If we can just define, label, compartmentalize everything, that we can get a handle on this foreboding apocalypse and navigate it in a way that won't destroy us. That's what he thinks. Whereas Vivian is the exact opposite almost. I mean, she's hey, you know what? We don't know how exactly this is all going to play out. But what we do know is that if we're adaptable, if we can improvise as things pop up into our field of awareness, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Spirit will have our back as long as we are willing to keep rolling with the punches. That is genuinely what she believes. Very different, very, very different approaches to how to deal with like disruption, basically, and maybe perhaps shared disruption. I'm really thinking about like the old folks in my life when I was a kid, my grandparents, and almost all of them, not all, but almost all of them were from rural country farming kind of backgrounds. So especially my dad's parents. So in their cultures, their communities, a bad harvest was a shared experience. For instance, like if the weather just wasn't agreeable, everybody ate a little bit less. That was a shared experience, shared pressures. They had shared values in terms of how to deal with that kind of thing, whatnot. And today, our problems often feel so much more individual, and we have a lot of basically media influence telling us to internalize, to feel ashamed if you're not succeeding in this world. Like somehow, oh, we're affording everyone the same opportunities, so if you didn't succeed, that's on you. Like that kind of attitude. And it's not true. It's absolutely not true. Systemic things are real, and we do share in problems a lot more than we are encouraged to consider, but it's not as obvious because our the way that we reciprocate, the way that we conduct transactions between each other to be able to live is hidden in supply chains now, rather than us directly like bartering with each other or directly working on a crop together or building a building together, etc., etc. And it's made us more efficient, but to what end? And do we need to be more efficient? I mean, how much do we really need to do? What's the point? In the grand scheme of things, what's the point? And I have long said that nothing actually matters outside of the grand scheme of things. If it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Is it really worth freaking out about? Is it really worth putting energy in to try to fix? You know, Vivian would say no. Russell would probably say, I need a spreadsheet so that I can weigh the pros and cons. Oh. So that's kind of funny. I think Vivian largely represents a more emotional way of handling things, but emotional in a positive sense, like in healthy emotions. Although, you know, she does have that shadow side where she might avoid commitment, might avoid staying in one place, would probably be a more pertinent way, relevant way of defining who she is in this particular reading, because we are getting like apocalyptic cycles of time kind of narratives coming through here and feelings coming through here. We're not so much getting a plot, we're really more so getting like case studies in this one. So that's a little harder to read on with the tarot, but we're gonna take a stab at it and see what happens here. So when everything seems to be falling apart, what's the best way to approach it? I think the truth is in the middle. And I think that it takes all kinds to make the world go round. Like, we would all be the same if we didn't all need to be different. I'm really not kidding about that. I mean, if you think about it, human beings are primates. And we share a lot in common with all other primates. So we are extremely social species. There's not a primate on Earth that can survive in the wild for very long without a survival group, tribe, a herd, a pack, whatever you want to call it. And we've been here for over 300,000 years. Like, that's a really long time. And as far as we know, we've only had civilization for like 10,000 years. So, you know, we haven't been living outside of like tribal communal life for very long at all. And to be fair too, most people have been rural, you know, farming people throughout most of history, up until just like 100 years ago, maybe a little more. And rural farming type people were still pretty tribalistic, you know, community centered. So we're living really outside of our biology. We're really we don't live in a social environment that exists in harmony with how we are hardwired to behave. And we need all different kinds of people in a community, in a survival group, because they all make a needed contribution. No single human being is so awesome that they can do all the things, that they can think all the ways at once, that they can feel all the feelings. You know, we need the variety, and we need to accept each other and cooperate, collaborate. That's how we survive. We have to believe we are magic. Nothing can stand in our way. You know, but we have to believe we are magic, not we have to believe I am magic, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. Go on and say, like, I am magic, because that's a good thing to remind yourself of. But also, whenever you say that, bear in mind, there is no I am without we are. Point blank. It might be hard to keep in mind because, again, the ways that we help each other survive are now hidden in supply chains. But that doesn't mean that we are not all still helping each other survive, because none of us would survive alone. We just wouldn't. I'm not sure what to ask about these two and how they're interacting or what more should be said about them. Although I do see that I've got 22 minutes and 17 seconds on the clock, so it's already been a pretty good length of a video anyways, I think. But I always like to drop some tarot, so I think I'm just going to close this one down, because that's been some interesting thoughts, spiritual values to share with an audience to help build a collective. And I am quite excited about the cycle of time that we're in. Yes, I'm overwhelmed too. Yeah, I'm kind of scared too. Especially here in the United States, we have reasons to be afraid, right? But humanity overall is going to be okay. So there's that. And, you know, time is endless. There's that. There is no beginning and no end. The life that you're living right now is just one little drop in a big ass bucket. So no matter what we end up experiencing in this life, there's always going to be more of them. At least that's how I feel about myself. If you find that encouraging, then, you know, please share in the thought with me. But if you find it frightening, you know, you're not under any obligation to agree with me. For some people, the idea that, like, well, we could just live another life makes them feel like the life they're living currently is pointless. And I don't wish to make anyone feel that way. Interesting, a lot of material issues. And the sun. We've got the sun reversed, the ace of coins reversed, and the eight of coins upright. One thing that the sun talks about, to me personally, often is about trust. It's often depicted as a little baby riding on the back of a horse. Very carefree and joyful. Well, in order to feel that kind of unfettered joy, you have to feel safe. And you don't feel safe if you don't trust those you're around. If you don't trust the horse that you're riding. if you don't trust that the sun will keep shining. I read once that Pamela, what was her name? Pamela Coleman, who designed the Rider-Waite Tarot, that she said she drew the sun and the moon to mean the exact opposites of one another. So the moon is about how your perception can create illusion, delusion, that we don't always know what things are, especially not if they're in our shadow. We might not see ourselves correctly. And then the sun is about the opposite. It's about awareness. It's about seeing things for what they are, with acceptance, with without any difficulty, without any struggle, without any stress. And that energy would definitely reflect Vivian's adaptability, for sure. For one thing, if you're riding bareback on a horse, you gotta like shift your weight around to stay up on them. At least that's my understanding. I've never done it, but there's that too. And if that feels so different than this Ace of Coins reversed, which has to do with it could be new jobs. Sometimes it's very mundane, you know, like a new job, a new career. But it can also be about just investing in something new. And it's not always money. You might invest time. You might invest your energy, your emotions. Well, this is interesting. I feel like it's guidance. Like, do not invest your work, your hard labor, into that which does not bring you joy. Ideally, we should be able to build joy along with whatever else we're building. So if what we're building, I mean, sure, no matter what endeavor, what goal we pursue, etc., there's always going to be stressful aspects to it. There's going to be days where it just feels like a grind. You don't want to show up, drag yourself out of bed, get shit done. You still got to do it anyways. But overall, what we're working on should have room for joy, at the least, and ideally should help us build a foundation that supports joy. I wonder how that relates to when these two different approaches to feeling that the larger collective is in chaos. Like the collective that is humanity, or that is America, or, you know, etc. Because there's these two very different ways of approaching it. And with Russell, the fallout shelter optimist who's got to define everything, you know, being so detail-oriented and kind of judgmental, which I think is merely more so means about his discernment. It's not as much about his being judgy, like in a toxic sense. He's more so trying to understand what is and is not right or good for himself. I would say that he would vibe more with the Eight of Coins. Two sides to every story and the truth in the middle. Oh, well, if we're only willing to do what is joyful and we're not willing to put in the work, then things won't bring us opportunities or happiness either. It's the truth is very much in the middle on that. It's kind of like the whole reading adds up to almost like mundane advice, you know, the old adage, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Wait, Russell over here is one who prepares for the worst. But the interesting thing about Vivian is she's not just hoping for the best. She's able to improvise and adapt with difficult or challenging situations. But I do think she would have a tendency to run if she felt like she had to stay too long in one place to build something. She would bail the first day. She had to drag herself out of bed and it didn't feel joyful to build it. She would have trouble maintaining an overview that overall it's worth it. Overall it does make a foundation for joy. And so if Russell and Vivian are representing two sides of our unconscious or two sides of our own selves, then I would say that Spirit is calling us to honor both of those sides, to listen to both of those sides, and to strike a balance in the middle for our own selves. If you are feeling motivated to make any serious life changes about, if you're motivated to make any serious life changes due to what is going on the world stage, it would probably benefit you to reflect on what has come up here in this reading. Arm yourself with just enough information. It's hard to know how much is too much, but I would say try to feel it out. Conjure faith, like that love with Spirit, the trust energy that comes from the sun. Decide what your work boundaries are, like how much is too much work, how much is too much effort, how much is too little. Who do you have in your life that you can make moves and changes with, like to build a foundation of security? And then we also might want to zoom out, you know, how can we build communities even where we can build and adapt together as a whole group, sharing in the way that this stuff affects us, because you know, we're not alone. Interesting. I feel like that's good. That's a good length for a video. Kind of too many handwritten cards and not enough tarot, but that's okay. The tarot cards are much prettier. I'm gonna have to design some decks with actual images in them one of these days. I started a tarot card deck actually that's based on simulation theory. I haven't gotten very far through it, and I haven't worked on it in a couple of years, but I'd like to pick that back up. It was really coming along. Oh yeah, I was gonna pull some of these guys. These are just final words. They're not really final advice. They're just, yeah, closing thoughts, you could say. Sometimes life falls apart not because you made a bad choice, but because you quit making a bad choice. Yeah, this whole reading feels like we should be cautious about going to extremes. There's not just one way to solve a problem. So, in this case, the bad choice would be going to extremes. If we can quit being too much like Russell or too much like Vivian, either one, and strike the balance in the middle, things are likely to build rather than fall apart. That's the future. That's the future. Like what is the apocalypse? It's just the conclusion of a cycle. Which means, well, not necessarily, but in this case it does mean that another cycle begins. And another cycle beginning means that the new world is being built, right? And the timelines kind of overlap here. You know, you're not going to see a clean break like, oh, this cycle ended on this day and we started the new one the very next day. No, it's kind of shifty. So even though things haven't completely fallen apart yet, maybe we should be building, thinking about how to build, talking about how to build, getting excited, putting our magic out, setting our intentions. And then also, I don't know why, but I feel like I should throw this out there. Just in the little ways that we interact and show kindness to one another when we're just out and about doing our little things and mundane life can have an impact on people in ways that might surprise you. So remember the kindness. Okay, and here's the last one I'm going to read here. Zoom out. What is the systemic context your personal issues occurred in? Oh, that's hilarious, because that's just so apropos for what this whole video has turned out to be about. Let's see. Can you forgive others for being acculturated by systems that have caused problems for you? Can you work to change systems for future generations? That is something that has been coming through for me over and over again. Just the phrase 7 generations, 7 generations, 7 generations. Like, man, we could, like, you know how I was talking in the beginning of the video about how if we don't change underlying values, all the information in the world is not going to help us change our behavior. Yeah, how do we change our underlying values in a way that will, by 7 generations out, like ahead of us, they'll be so much further ahead because the values were already changed first. So that creates flow. Hopefully that makes sense. Radical, guys. Super cool. I hope you enjoyed that story. If you did, I would love to hear how you find it relatable or inspiring or whatever, you know. So leave me a comment. I would greatly appreciate that for sure. And of course, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, so if you are so inclined. And I will definitely be back posting more readings, maybe even another one today. We'll see. And until then, I hope that you are doing very well in the multiverse. Bye bye.